Which is better, the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G or the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G? Well, in this video, we're gonna find out. What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison of the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G versus the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G. Now, both of these devices were recently launched by Samsung in March of 2023, and I have a feeling that they're both going to be very successful phones for the company. Now, these devices are sometimes offered both in the same region, but also in certain regions, only one's offered over the other. So definitely take a look and see, but I have linked to the phones in the video description so they can see the most up-to-date pricing and availability for them. Now, as the names of these phones do imply, the Galaxy A54 5G is the successor to last year's A53 5G, whereas the A34 5G is the successor to last year's A33 5G. Now, both of these phones were not dramatic redesigns over their predecessors, but rather kind of more of an evolution. And I feel like that was a good move on Samsung's part, because they're taking phones that were already great and making them even better. And I'm really excited to show you all the various innovations and improvements throughout this video. But as far as comparing these phones goes, the first thing is I want to go over the differences related to the displays. Now, with the A34 5G, we're actually getting a bigger display compared to the A54 5G. Now, when holding the two phones side by side, without a doubt, the A34 5G is the larger phone of the two. And then as far as the displays go, with the A54, we have a 6.4-inch display compared to a larger 6.6-inch display with the A34. And then both phones do feature Corning Gorilla Glass 5 for the display glass. So it does make the displays decently durable, especially compared to phones that have lower quality glass. Now, with both phones, we're getting Super AMOLED displays running at 120 Hz for the refresh rate. So overall, really smooth performance in general. And the displays themselves have great colors, really good viewing angles too. And then the displays are 1080p on both phones, so everything's very crisp and clear. So overall, these phones are excellent for watching video content, going on social media, looking at various photos, really doing anything that involves the displays. And since the displays are very large here in both devices, it does give you a very immersive experience. Now then from there, due to the A54 5G having a slightly smaller display, we do get a higher PPI at 403 compared to 390 for the A34. Both phones do feature 19.5:9 aspect ratios, and then with the A54, we have an 82.9% screen-to-body ratio compared to 84.9% for the screen-to-body ratio with the A34. Now, one major difference between these two devices is up top here. So with the Galaxy A54 5G, we're getting a 32 megapixel front-facing camera situated in a hole punch, whereas with the A34 5G, we're getting a 13 megapixel front-facing camera situated in a water drop notch. Now, I was really hoping that by 2023, the notch would be a thing of the past, but it seems like Samsung wants to keep things going with that. I really wish we would have gotten a hole punch similar to what we have here with the A54 on the A34. That being said though, I don't think the water drop notch is necessarily a deal breaker. It's just something that I wish would go away. Now, internally with both of these devices, we're getting 128 gigabytes of storage along with microSD card expansion. So having that much storage is really a great thing. That's plenty of space for most people. And then having the ability to add in a microSD card to offload photos and videos, for example, is a great thing too. So in general, I think with either of these two phones, you'll definitely be good to go related to the phone's storage. Now, there is no wireless charging with either device, which is a bit disappointing. Wireless charging is certainly a feature that I tend to use quite a bit on devices that do support them, so I do wish we had that, but then again, none of the A-series phones actually have wireless charging, so I'm not necessarily that surprised. Now, both of these phones do feature in-display fingerprint sensors, and they do work really well. But let's give it a try first with the A54 5G. So we'll see how that works, and there we go, very fast and accurate. And then now we'll try it out with the A34 5G. And there we go, that worked really well too. And then both phones do feature Face Unlock as another method for accessing them. Now, taking a look at the cameras on the back of both devices, there are some similarities, but also some differences. So I'll start off first with the A54 5G. So we have a 50 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera that can capture images at up to 123 degrees, and we have a 5 megapixel macro camera for close-up images. And then with the A34 5G, we have a 48 megapixel main camera, so slightly lower in megapixel count. We have an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, which is also lower in megapixel count, but can also capture images at up to 123 degrees. And we have a 5 megapixel macro camera, which is the same as the A54. And then both phones do feature portrait mode for both the front and rear cameras, and then they also feature 4K video recording for the front and rear cameras as well. Now here's how things look on the camera apps on both devices. So I'll take a photo with both phones right now, starting with the A54, and then now I'll take a photo with the A34, and then pulling them up on both phones here, you can see here's the difference in quality and appearance of the photos. So it does seem like in this demonstration, the photo from the A34 has a lot more color and a lot more saturation compared to the A54. Then from there, we can also access the ultra wide angle cameras in both phones. And then we can also head over to the More tab on both devices and get to the macro cameras. So let's try that out. I'm going to do a close-up picture with each. There we go. And then let's take the photo. Yeah, and in this demonstration as well, it seems like the A34 5G is the better camera. Let's now take a selfie. We'll take one with the A34. And then now we'll take one with the A54. And the quality does seem to be a bit better here as well with the A34. So I really wasn't expecting this. I figured the A54 would have the better cameras of these two devices, but it seems like at least in these tests, that is not the case. I think if anything, this proves that just because a phone has a higher megapixel count for the cameras doesn't mean the actual camera quality is better. Now, as far as processor and RAM go, with the Galaxy A54 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM paired up with the Samsung Exynos 1380 processor. And then with the Galaxy A34 5G, we also have 6GB of RAM, but we have a MediaTek processor, so the MediaTek Dimensity 1080. Now, both processors do support 5G connectivity, hence the names of these phones, which is great. And here are the benchmark scores I got from Geekbench 6 on both devices. So you can see, interestingly, the A34 5G actually has a higher single-core score compared to the A54 5G, whereas the A54 5G has a higher multi-core score. So overall, I would say performance is pretty similar for these two devices, which is pretty surprising. And I would say that these scores do also reflect my real-world performance when using the two phones, at least in the sense that these phones do seem equally as fast, or rather equally as slow, depending on what your standard is. Now, speaking of that, I feel like the performance of both of these phones is adequate for most people out there, but if you are someone who does more demanding tasks on your smartphone, such as video editing, high-performance gaming, maybe you like to run multiple apps at the same time for longer durations of time, then you might want to go for something a bit higher end and a bit more powerful. Also, I think if you're using your phone for work quite a bit, you might want to go for something more higher end. On the other hand, though, for the type of performance that you're getting here with either of these two phones, I feel like both are very capable. And then both phones feature 5,000 mAh internal batteries, along with up to 25 watt fast charging. They both have Android 13 with Samsung's One UI 5.1. They also both have NFC, so you can do tap and pay with Samsung Pay. We're also getting IP67 dust and water resistance on both phones, which means that either of these two devices can go underwater for up to 1 meter for up to 30 minutes, and both phones do have stereo speakers, so we're getting very excellent speakers on these devices. But now that I've gone over a lot of the various features and specifications of these two phones, let's now take a closer look at the hardware. Now, overall, other than the front panels here, which I've already talked quite a bit about, where you can see there are some pretty obvious differences, the phones are pretty similar. I would say the biggest difference, though, is that with the Galaxy A54 5G, we have glass on the back of the device, whereas it's plastic on the back of the A34 5G. On the other hand, though, I really like this kind of frosted finish on the A34 compared to the A54. The A54 picks up a lot more fingerprints, so I'm really not a big fan of that. I wish that we got the best of both worlds with either of these two phones, getting a glass back that's also frosted. And then also, running around the sides of these phones is a plastic band. Now on the left side of both phones, there's nothing. On the right side, both phones have volume up, volume down, and the power button. Then up top on both phones, an identical setup here with the noise canceling microphone and also the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. And then on the bottom of the two phones, with the microphones, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and the speakers. And then on the back of the two phones, also very identical as well, so pretty much the same form factor here, which is pretty cool. So in conclusion, which of these two phones is the better choice of the two? Well, that question is a bit difficult to answer because these phones are not both offered in all the same regions. So you might be in a certain region where only one phone is offered, but if both are offered, then I suppose you'd have to decide between these two phones. Now, there are pros and cons to both, as I went over in this video. Clearly, the A34 5G is a bit more powerful in some ways, at least for the single core score, but I would say general performance is about the same, but the camera quality is a lot better. So based on that, I would say that if you want the best cameras, I would go with the A34. But on the other hand, with the A54, I do appreciate that we're getting a more premium material here on the back with it being glass. And then also I do like that we're getting the hole punch for the front-facing camera. So that's really the trade-off here between these two phones. Oh, and I suppose too, another benefit with the A34 is that the display's a little bit bigger. But I suppose most importantly is what you think. What's important to you? You really have to think about that. That's why I wanted to go through all these different pros and cons of both phones in this video. But let me know in the comment section below what you think. Which one would you go with? And are both phones offered where you are? Or do you just have a choice of one or the other? Definitely let me know. But this concludes my comparison of the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G versus the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.